Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are bringing you another great game of CEDH. But before I do that, I want to remind everyone that we are still holding a giveaway for hitting 1,000 subscribers. And assuming this video goes up on Saturday, then today is your last day to enter. I will link the video with all the information in the corner, and best of luck. Ever wanted to get a commander pod in on spelltable but couldn't find enough players? Missing that last one player to fire a game on your Discord server? Well, try mtg Matchmaker, the first cross-server webcam mtg matchmaking Discord bot. Unlike other similar bots and paid services, mtg Matchmaker queues commander players across all installed Discord servers, so you can keep your Discord community while connecting with other players from others. With the launch of version 1.0, mtg Matchmaker has officially left beta and is continually being updated with new features. To learn more, check out the quick start guide that I'll have linked in the description of the video and start queuing up. Also, if you're interested in playing with us, hop on our Discord. We have an ever-growing community and would love to talk MTG or whatever strikes your fancy. And another benefit is we often let people know when we play and would love to meet some new people. Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board. First up, we have Jimmy and his Sythis Harvest Hands deck. This is Cedh the Enchantress. It's an enchantment matters strategy that utilizes Sythis' innate card draw to outvalue its opponents. It generates lots of mana and can really churn through the deck once it gets going. Today we have some new faces to the channel. Both Brian and Simon are members of the Discord and were able to join us for quite a few games, so you'll definitely be seeing more of them in the future. But back to the deck text. Today, Brian has brought a new commander to the channel, Tinybones. This is a mono-black discard matters list that aims to accrue lots of value off Tinybones while disrupting his opponent's hands. Still, he can assemble one of his own combos in the deck. It's definitely a fun deck to run, although I'm not too sure how I feel about being on the opposing side of it. In the third slot is Simon and his Thalia Garden of Thraben deck. This group hug list aims to help his opponents out. Sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face. All jokes aside, this is a mono-white prison strategy that aims to tax the board into submission and grind the game to a halt. This is a deck that preys on combo strategies while being able to pressure his opponents while they try and bank enough mana to even cast their spells. And bringing up the rear, we have Fernando piloting Najeela. This is a 5-color Thasos consultation list that backdoors into an infinite creatures and combats combo with Najeela, who, even if just left alone, can amass a horde of warriors to take their opponents out. But without further ado, let's get on to the gameplay. Jimmy starts off the game with Savannah and the new bane of CEDH players everywhere, Esper Sentinel.
You can draw.
He follows it up with a Mox Diamond and pitches a Plains. Brian cracks a Bloodstained Mire for a swamp and doesn't wait to search as he then plays a Chromox, letting Jimmy draw. He imprints a Rain of Filth and uses the mana to cast a Fellwar Stone. Simon plays a Plains and then uses it to cast a Sarah's Ascendant. He also gives in and then casts a Mox Amber and lets Jimmy draw. Fernando shocks in a Breeding Pool and also has a turn 1 play, that one being a Noble Hierarch. Jimmy bolts himself when he cracks as an Arid Mesa to find an untapped Temple Garden. He uses it to cast his commander Sythis, and wanting even more draws, he casts a Utopia Sprawl on a Savannah, triggering Sythis. After shuffling and drawing, he heads to combat and swings the Sentinel at Brian for 1. Brian plays another Swamp and casts the new card everyone is groaning about, Dauthi Voidwalker. It resolves and he ends his turn casting his commander Tinybones. Simon has another Plains and heads to combat. He decides to smack Brian with his Ascendant, and on his second main tries to slow the game down a bit as he plays a Thorn of Amethyst, but hates he has to give Jimmy another card due to the Sentinel. Fernando does not like the Thorn as he pays 1 for a Lotus Petal and then cracks it along with his Hierarch to cast the Dark Confidant. Jimmy plays a Forest as land and then casts a Sylvan Library and draws off Sythis. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing that Jimmy passes and has to move to discard as he discards a Plains. Please note that any card that goes into the graveyard is being exiled due to the Dauthi Voidwalker. Brian starts off his turn with a spicy card. He pays 4 for a Bottomless Pit, and it resolves. Although it doesn't stay for long, as Jimmy at his end step casts a Nature's Claim to blow it up. Simon plays a Marsh Flats as land and casts his commander Thalia. and finishes his turn swinging the Ascendant at Brian, who takes 6. Fernando on his upkeep reveals a Ponder off the Confidant, and luckily finds a land. He plays an Underground Sea and then casts a Mindblade Render, and passes after seeing no good attacks. Jimmy starts off with his Sylvan Library and decides to keep 1 extra. He ignores all the stacks out there as he casts a Destiny Spinner, getting another draw of Sythis. He then pays 2 mana for a Chromox and imprints a Noxious Revival. At the end of his second main, Simon cycles a Secluded Step, and on Jimmy's end step, Brian loses 1 to draw off Tinybones. Brian plays another Swamp and decides he doesn't like the added tax, as he pays 2 for a Deadly Rollick, but lets Jimmy draw off the Sentinel trigger. Brian must want blood as he then casts a Bone Shard, discarding Liliana to kill the Sentinel, but it doesn't stay dead for long as Brian immediately trades his Voidwalker for it. And on his end step, Simon cracks his fetch for a Plains. Simon plays a tapped Windbrisk Heights and hides a card away for the future, before casting a Scroll Rack. Fortunately for Brian, it looks like his hard work on getting the Sentinel on his side pays off as he gets the draw. Simon then heads to combat and decides Jimmy is getting out of hand and sends the Ascendant his way. Fernando this time reveals an Assassin's Trophy off the Confidant, and, seeking more cards, heads his Mindblade Render at Simon, who takes the hit and Fernando gets the draw as it connects. Fernando unfortunately still doesn't have a land and decides to instead enchant his Underground Sea with a Utopia Sprawl, giving Brian a card off the Sentinel.
I'm jealous.
He follows this up with a Chromox, but forgets about the Thorn.
Paid 1 for the Chromox, right?
That sucks.
Yep.
That's about it.
So instead he just passes the turn. Jimmy Sylvans, but doesn't take any extra. He decides to pay 4 for an Earthcraft and then draws off Sythis. He starts tapping his creatures for mana and ends his turn casting a Soul Ring. Brian plays another Swamp and then heads to combat. He pokes Simon with his Sentinel for 1, and then on a second main sacrifices the Sentinel to a Diabolic Intent and finds an Anvil of Bogarden, but is done after that. Simon starts his turn drawing 2 and discarding a Wandering Archaic. He plays a Plains and then Scroll Racks to put 3 aside and draw 3. He moves to combat and swings the Ascendant back at Jimmy for 6. And at his end step, Brian draws off the Tinybones and Fernando brainstorms. Fernando, knowing what's on top, takes 0 off the Dark Confidant, revealing a Rejuvenating Spring. He then draws 2 and discards a Flooded Strand. He plays a Badlands and then pays 3 for an Assassin's Trophy to try and blow up the Thorn. Simon grabs a Plains and Fernando follows this up with a Snap to bounce the Destiny Spinner and untap 2 lands. Still not done, Fernando casts an Imperial Seal, but this time Simon has a response as he flashes in an Aven Mind Sensor. It resolves and Fernando looks at the top 4 to find a card before heading to combat and swinging the Mind Blade at Simon, who takes it and Fernando loses a life to draw. Now being freed from the taxation effect, Fernando then plays a Chromox and imprints a Ponder. And at his end step, Brian draws off the Tinybones. Jimmy starts off by drawing 2 and discarding 1 from the Anvil before getting his Sylvan triggered. He doesn't take any extra and then goes to recast Destiny Spinner. It resolves and he draws off Sythis. He then casts an uncounterable Aura Shards, drawing off Sythis and following it up with a Jeweled Lotus. Unfortunately, without any stacks pieces, Jimmy can just keep going off as he then casts a Sanctum Weaver. He uses the Aura Shards trigger to blow up the Anvil, while also drawing off Sythis. He plays an Ancient Tomb as land, and unfortunately for Jimmy, he does misplay as he casts a Drannith Magistrate with no available white mana. The Aura Shards blows up Fernando's Chromox, and the Drannith is then tapped for mana to cast an Enchantress's Presence, gaining Jimmy the final card draw for the turn, with Brian drawing a card at his end step. Brian takes quite a while pondering on how to deal with Jimmy before finally deciding on his course of action. He casts a Jet Medallion and then an Animate Dead targeting the Wandering Archaic. This does prompt a response from Simon, who casts an Enlightened Tutor to find a Mana Crypt to put on top. The Archaic resolves and then Brian casts a Dark Deal, hopefully find something new, but has to give the turn over to Simon after drawing at his end step. Simon starts off with his tutored Mana Crypt and then slams down an Elvish Norn. Unfortunately for him, even though it would shut Jimmy down, it hurts both Brian and Fernando too much, so Fernando ends up countering it with a Force of Will, pitching a Flusterstorm. Not surprised to see the Nord not stick, Simon heads to combat and swings both creatures at Jimmy for 8, who takes a hit and Simon is done after that. Fernando reveals another land, this one being an exotic orchard. Decides to risk it as he plays and cracks a windswept heath, but fails to find and shuffles as he heads to combat, and swings the Mindblade Render at Simon. It connects and he loses one to draw one. Fernando doesn't think the game will last much longer and decides to keep playing it risky as he sacrifices his Confidant to an Eldritch Evolution. Brian gets a copy of it but fails to find anything in the top 4, while Fernando has much better luck.
I'm gonna shit your pants.
You're gonna make me shit my pants?
That's his Oracle. Hell yeah.
Oh my god, are you gonna win?
Let's go, boys.
Building priority and passing priority.
This isn't the end as Fernando selects a card to stay on top, and at his end step, Simon exiles Jimmy's Sanctum Weaver with a Path to Exile. He doesn't pay for the Archaic, and Brian copies the spell and chooses to exile Sythis. Jimmy fails both searches and moves to his turn. Jimmy uses his library but doesn't take any extra. He plays a command tower and casts swords on the Aven Mind Sensor. He pays 2 for the Archaic and then casts a Silence, also paying 2 for it. We do realize that the Archaic will still put copies of spells even though the Silence is in play. And Jimmy keeps moving forward as he casts an Enlightened Tutor to find a Squirrel's Nest. Jimmy then cracks his Lotus to recast Sythis and draws off his Enchantress's Presence. He casts the Nest and can make an infinite number of tapped squirrels, but due to Summoning Sickness he decides to wait on the squirrels though. Brian unfortunately doesn't have much as he plays a Scourge Familiar, and in response Jimmy makes a bunch of squirrels to blow up the remaining artifacts and enchantments, and Brian is done after that. Simon starts his turn off by smacking Jimmy for 6 with the Ascendant. Luckily for the table, Simon actually drew the best card in the situation, as he casts an Austere Command to blow up all enchantments and creatures with CMC 3 or less. The board is wiped and Simon hands the turn over to Fernando. Fernando has a quick turn. He plays a Taiga and casts Najeela, now that the Drannith is gone. Jimmy cracks a Misty on his turn to find a forest, and he then casts a Shalai, Voice of Plenty. Now having a shield for spot removal, he finishes off his turn recasting Sythis. Brian has a good top deck as he casts a Necropotence. He follows it up with an Imperial Seal and then pays 6 life into the Necro. Hey guys, unfortunately when I was editing this, I did realize that Brian actually didn't lose any life on his turn like he should have. Brian actually should have lost 8 life, 2 from the Imperial Seal and then 6 from the Necro. Simon doesn't have much of a turn as he recasts Thalia and plays a Strip Mine. Fernando on his turn plays an Exotic Orchard. Not seeing many options, he swings Najeela and a newly created warrior at Brian, who doesn't block. Before the end of combat, Fernando then pays Woobird to get an additional combat and swings his board again at Brian, with him now blocking 1 warrior. And at his end step, Simon strips Jimmy's Ancient Tube. Jimmy starts off by casting a Lotus Petal and then a Green Sun Zenith, where X equals 3. He finds a Cetesian champion and follows it up with a Seal of Cleansing, drawing 2 cards and getting a counter on the champion. He finishes his turn swinging Shalai at Brian. Brian doesn't draw, but casts a Cabal Ritual for 5 black, discards 2 cards, and then taps out for a Peer into the Abyss. He draws half his library and goes to 6 life, and starts discarding cards for black mana. He first starts off by casting a Mana Crypt, he then sacks a swamp to play Lake of the Dead, and then a Wishclaw Talisman, which he activates to find a card. He gets Feed the Swarm, which he then casts to blow up the Seal of Cleansing and lose 2 life. He then sacks a swamp to cast a Grim Tutor, which finds him a card and puts him down to 1 life. He then discards a bunch more cards to cast a Professor Onyx. He does have other plays to gain protection, but with his opponents basically tapped out, he ends up just casting a Chain of Smog infinitely to drain his opponents out, winning him the game. Game review. Well, that certainly was a game. I thought Jimmy had it, but unfortunately Infinite Squirrels doesn't win you the game immediately, and he paid the price for it. Although to be fair, Simon did draw the perfect card for the situation. I did feel bad for Fernando, as he really wasn't able to build out his board due to being after Simon and all of his stax effects. He had to spend all of his resources stopping that, while the other players benefited without really having to do much. And in the end, Thalia did actually have a big impact on the last turn, as Jimmy didn't leave enough mana open to cast a Path to Exile he had in his hand. But it definitely was refreshing seeing these monocolored and dual-colored CDH decks duke it out. I feel like Partners and the new 5-color Legends have just really pushed out a lot of the more fringe decks that we used to see. But question for the viewer, I was recently asked by a friend what would I do if I could change one thing in Magic, and my thought would be to change Tymna to be Boros, not Orzhov. And now I pose the same question to you, what would you change if given the opportunity? Let me know in the comments down below. Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I just wanted to let you know that we have a TCG affiliate link, and if you ever see a card you want to try or are inspired to brew something new, use our link when purchasing and we'll receive a small portion of the sale. This is a great way to support the channel, and if you enjoyed the gameplay, please leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps us keep making videos. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.